Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Nuño here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Liucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin Buchanan.
We will develop men. We will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
I think we're coming into this year with a new confidence.
Schools are like, we're freaking Texas A&M, man. Like,
that's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
You had no other option but one hand at that point.
Yeah, man, 50-50 ball, I got to come down with it.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
All right, good Thursday morning, Bryan College Station. Welcome to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I'm Ryan Brauninger in the lovely Rollo Insurance studio, filling in for David today. I guess signing day was a little bit too much for our favorite Latino radio host. So I'm sitting in the big chair this morning. We will recap Mike Elko's first signing day in College Station. I say signing day. For those of you unfamiliar, it is now an early signing period. I have shared my thoughts on the change between an early signing day and an early signing period. Or really the old school used to be February signing day, comparing that now to the December signing period. That's going to be one of the things that we discuss throughout the show today with our various guests, one of which will be TexAgs co-owner and executive editor, Mr. Billy Liucci, who we are anticipating, and that's a key word, we are anticipating Billy in the studio from 8:30 to 9:30. When I spoke to him on the phone last night before I went to bed, Billy said, I don't know, I'll let you know in the morning. I think he was dealing with some kind of haircut potentially in Dallas, but who knows? So Billy, he's going to be on the show. We just don't know if we're going to get him in person or not. But we do have, outside of Billy, a lot of really fun and entertaining guests, starting with a recent Texas A&M signee, a guy that put pen to paper yesterday, longtime commit from one of the most storied and prestigious high school programs in the state of Texas, safety signee Myles Davis from Converse Judson will join us at 8:20 on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. Super excited to get to talk to Myles. If you're unfamiliar, number one, he's a heck of a football player. Really good. One of the top safeties in the state. One of the best football players overall in San Antonio. So looking forward to signing or to talking with Myles about his signing and kind of his willingness to stay with the process through the coaching change, his willingness to be unwavered in his commitment, his willingness to give Mike Elko and company a chance. And one of the things that is not in place just yet for Coach Elko is his defensive coordinator. So there was a lot of trust placed in Coach Elko by Myles Davis. He had flirted with a visit to Texas late in the football season, never took that, returned to College Station for an official visit in the first or the second week of December. So it was last weekend, the final weekend before signing day, returns to College Station for another official visit. And if you're unfamiliar with how recruiting goes, if a head coach is let go and a new coach is brought in during the recruiting cycle, you can take, if you're a kid, you can take more than one official visit to that school. So that happened with the vast majority of the kids that were in Texas A&M's commit class. And a bunch of those kids ended up signing yesterday. By the numbers, Texas A&M signed 12 players throughout the day yesterday. They still have 4 players committed who have not signed. We will go through those at various points of the show today. But and I'll get Billy's thoughts on where A&M sits with those 4 commits, and we can bounce some ideas off each other because, you know, I deal with the day-to-day. He deals with kind of the overarching big picture of this stuff, and he has for so long. So maybe we can bounce some stuff off each other and maybe get some questions answered. It was a wild signing day across the country. If this radio show or a version of it is happening in Gainesville, Florida, boy, do they have a lot to talk about. Wild day for Billy Napier and the Gators. We're going to get into some of that. We'll get into Oklahoma fans. What are y'all doing? This story kind of emerged late yesterday after the fan base in Norman took to the internets to avenge a portal loss of theirs. If you have not seen this, offensive lineman Caden Green, a really good player coming out of high school, was at the University of Oklahoma last year, goes into the transfer portal this offseason and chooses to continue his collegiate career at the University of Missouri. Because he did that, Oklahoma fans took to the internet with some scorn, as they typically do daily on Twitter. One of the fan bases that I least enjoy having to deal with when they pop up in my mentions, but because they are so fervent and there's a crazy amount of them on Twitter. I think the Oklahoma Twitter army has got to be the biggest in number and craziest in sanity of all college football fan bases on the internet. Anyway, they find Caden Green's father's business. I believe he's a State Farm agent. And they proceed to leave 1-star reviews continuously throughout the evening on this man's business, so that when people in the area may be looking for insurance needs, his will be the most poorly rated. I think that's crossing the line. But, hey, this is college football. In the day and age of the internet and Twitter and Instagram, there's no place for normalcy, it seems, or if there is,
well, Bronny,
it's ever shrinking.
Sorry to chime in here, but isn't this not the first time? Wasn't it Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy when he decided to come to A&M? The Oklahoma fans got a little rowdy on Twitter as well.
Well, it was David Hicks.
David Hicks.
It was. Right. I'm sure they were upset with Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy too, but DJ Hicks, they crossed the line on a couple of podcasts, and that wasn't just the fan base. I believe that was some people that actually cover the team,
media members,
that had some choice words for DJ Hicks. And I would imagine, Nick, that those choice words would be altered had they had to make them face-to-face with DJ Hicks as opposed to on the internet.
100%.
Everybody gets a little bit bigger and badder on the internet, including Luke Evangelist. Good morning, Luke. Oh, are you on?
Yeah, my there it is. Yeah, that is 100% true. I do get a little bit rowdy on the internet, but I've been better lately.
Well, you had some thoughts on this Caden Green at Oklahoma deal. Will you tell me in the back?
No, I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, wow, that is very on brand for Oklahoma. I feel like ever since Lincoln Riley left, that fan base has been in shambles, and it's probably not going to get any easier for them when they join the SEC. But, yeah, I saw it, and I was like, wow, can you imagine if that – like when a kid doesn't commit to A&M, it's not the end of the world here. We just move on and wish the kid well for the most part. Like there's always that 1% of a fan base that doesn't represent you accurately. But for Oklahoma, I feel like it's the other way around. There's that 99% that is just not the best representation of the university. So it kind of sucks to see that. And
don't you feel like that's a little overboard?
Oh, it's 100% overboard. I feel for the kid and his family, and I also feel like the University of Oklahoma is not being represented in the way that you would want. I feel like if I was a true fan of that school, I would be embarrassed with what's going on Twitter.
Well, I just scrolled a little bit through the comments, and there were some Oklahoma fans that were expressing embarrassment and disgust at what had happened. But you're right, man. That it seems like they were always, if I can remember correctly, going back a ways, like even with the Bryce Foster recruitment where he chose A&M over Oklahoma, they've always been a little bit scorned of a fan base, and not scorned because they've had incredible success on the field. It just feels like they take things personally maybe on social media. And if there's one thing you can't do in this day and age is take things personally on the internet. It's just words on a computer screen. You don't have to wake up, crack your knuckles, and get ready to defend Oklahoma's honor at every turn all over Twitter every day. But And you know what the commonality is between most of the people that do that on Twitter? Do you know what the commonality is, Luke?
I would say they have nothing else better going on in their personal life.
Sure, but I can get more specific than that. I would say there's a really high percentage of people that do this on the internet and that do it under the guise of a fake name and no profile picture.
Yep.
So the anonymity of the whole thing lends itself to, once again, people being big and bad and tough on the internet. And so when I get chirped by an OU account or a Texas account or even some A&M accounts, and they've got no real name and they've got no real profile photo, it's just ignored. Like, I have more respect if you're going to chirp me with an actual picture of yourself and your actual name. Like, have a spine, stand behind what you say. Don't run behind and make things up and get upset and go overboard on the internet, whether it's with me or anybody else, behind an anonymous account. I just, I think that's pretty cowardly.
Yeah, I have no respect for people who run anonymous accounts either, Brawny, especially ones who are big and may cover A&M sports. But yeah.
Easy. Hey, so Luke, Nick, what is your burner account on Twitter?
I don't have one. I'm just curious as to how we've gone, 11 minutes now, and we haven't mentioned Luke's sweater. I'm kind of disappointed he didn't save this for yesterday or tomorrow.
I can't see the whole thing.
Well,
Santa's.
Look at it. I mean, it's pink.
It's very
sparkly.
Yeah, well, I have a wide array of Christmas sweaters, and so I just picked this one to wear today. I have a even better one for tomorrow, actually, when Nick and I host.
He already told me what it was. It's not. It's not going to. It's gonna ruffle. If OB was here, it would ruffle his feathers.
Oh, well, I'm glad that he's not then.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I wish he was. That would be some good holiday entertainment heading into the Christmas season. But we do got to talk about what actually happened with Texas A&M yesterday. As I mentioned, 12 players signed out of the high school ranks. Mike Elko has been on a little bit of run of form in the transfer portal. As I tried to pull up that number, I believe it was 4 and 5 days at one point, if I remember correctly. So let me scroll down on starting with Alex Howard, the linebacker addition out of Youngstown State. That was 5 days ago. 4 days ago, Cyrus Allen, wide receiver, coming to Texas A&M from Louisiana Tech. 3 days ago, defensive back Trey Jones, Central Michigan to Texas A&M. And then 2 days ago, Garrett Miller, the tight end from Purdue, originally out of Round Rock, he committed to Texas A&M. So that little run of additions in the portal was followed up by yesterday's signing day, where Texas A&M made 2 massive additions in the state of Florida out of Carrollwood Day School in Tampa, with defensive end Solomon Williams and wide receiver Isaiah Williams. Isaiah Williams committed to Florida. That was a signing day flip by the Aggies. Solomon Williams, longtime target. When you turn this kid's tape on, it is a ton of fun to watch. And we discussed last night on the in-home visit. We discussed it a little bit on the radio show, I believe, at the end of the day yesterday. If you're asking me, give me one player that Texas A&M signed that would have the biggest chance to have an immediate impact, it would be Solomon Williams. You just turn the tape on, and it's hard to ignore that this kid is an elite pass rusher. And we know kind of when you go back and look at Mike Elko's tenure as the defensive coordinator, even though he doesn't have one right now with him in College Station, that's something we'll get to with Billy, because Coach Elko made some comments about that yesterday in his press conference, when you look back at Mike Elko's tenure at Texas A&M as the defensive coordinator, and you look at how much he values these kind of guys. So we're looking at the stats. If you're watching with us on YouTube or on the site, you see 21 tackles for loss this season, 8 sacks. Like, this guy just lives in opponents' backfields. And this is a position that he plays that is kind of like that Tyree Johnson position that flourished under Mike Elko from 2018 through 2021. And Nick has got some of the tape pulled up. I mean, this kid is just violence at the line of scrimmage. And because he is so adept at playing out there on that edge, and he's got such an advanced arsenal of pass rush moves already for an 18-year-old, it's hard to see that this twitch wouldn't have a chance to play next year. So you talk about a massive addition to the 2024 recruiting class. He made one yesterday with Solomon Williams and Solomon Williams' teammate, and shares a surname, Isaiah Williams, at a position at wide receiver that I think people just kind of took for granted at Texas A&M because they had so many good players there. But when you look at what's about to happen in the bowl game and the amount of scholarship receivers available for the bowl game, you're going to go, yeah, A&M needs to make additions to next year's roster at wide receiver, whether that's via the transfer portal, which they already have with Cyrus Allen and Javon Harvey, or they do it through the high school ranks, which they started to do yesterday with Isaiah Williams. They also signed Ernest Campbell out of Refugio. There was a lot of people on the site giving Mike Elko a hard time for his pronunciation of Refugio. Listen, the guy is from the Northeast. He spent 4 years in Texas, and they didn't recruit any kids from Refugio. So if it's your first time seeing that town name, Nick, how would you pronounce it?
Refugio.
Yeah. So that's kind of what he did. So give the guy a little bit of grace. I'm sure Alan Cannon or somebody told him shortly after the press conference, hey, it's actually not pronounced the way it's spelled. You know, phonetically it's it is Refugio, but it's pronounced Refugio. So anyway, I didn't mean to get you a far field, Nick, and make you scramble to pull up Ernest Campbell's highlight tape, but he did sign
no, it's
late.
all right. We got plenty of graphics. I'm more than happy to use.
You've got to
we
use
didn't get
all
to
of
use
them.
them yesterday.
Yeah, and we do got to go to a break so that I can get to I want to make sure that we get Myles on time. But my point was going back to the receiver position. When you look at what A&M's got available for the bowl game, and Billy hinted that Noah Thomas hadn't practiced this week leading up to the bowl game. He talked about that on yesterday's show. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at Moose Muhammad, Ja'Day Walker, Micah Tease. Am I missing anybody?
Baby Gronk.
Jeez. I didn't put that on the show rundown for a reason, Luke. I will not address that. Okay. But is that all they've got? Is those 3 scholarship guys?
Yep.
I mean, what about the tight end room? Are they going to just shift those guys out to play receiver, Theo and Max Wright? I mean, you kind of have to. Yeah,
and that's why it's so important that they make those additions out of the portal and the high school. But I'm really interested to see what happens in this bowl game, like what kind of the receiver rotations look like, because some of these walk-ons, whether it be Andrew Molesky or Pierce Turner, I would bet on some of those guys playing and maybe playing quite a bit depending on what happens. But that just goes to show you they have a giant need in that receiver room, and Mike Elko is addressing it both via the portal and high school recruiting, as you have to in this day and age. So we'll see what happens, what unfolds at receiver in the next window leading up to that February signing day. We'll also check the portal, because I would think that they've got to go add at least one more pass catcher via that transfer portal, and also the activity in that transfer portal continues just to be crazy. Remember, that doesn't close until January 2nd. So once these bowl games start being played, I would expect to see a large influx or another wave of players going into the transfer portal for A&M to be able to pick and choose out of to increase and enhance their 2024 roster. All right, let's go to break. It's the Go Hour presented by Maroon U on TexAgs Radio. When we come back, we're going to go out to the Brian Foley Law Hotline, check in with Myles Davis. Just signed with Texas A&M yesterday out of Converse Judson High School. Excited to talk to him and get his perspective on his high school career and then his future in Aggieland. So a lot more. Stay with us. This is TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, rolling right along. Ryan Brauninger in the host chair. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. This is a Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations, and we are inside the lovely Rollo Insurance Studios, and we are going out to the Brian Foley Law Hotline to talk to Texas A&M signee out of Converse Judson, safety Myles Davis. Myles, I really appreciate you joining the show this morning, buddy. How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great, and I know it was a big day for you and your family and all the folks out there at Judson yesterday. Just kind of take me through what signing a scholarship to Texas A&M, what that felt like, and just the meaning of the day for you.
It was pretty significant. I mean, for me, it was just like signing a piece of paper. You know, my mom, she was pretty stressed and like reading over everything, making sure everything was good. But I mean, it was all laughs. I mean, it was just really an accomplishment to what all work I put in with family and friends that's helped me get to this point.
Take me back in your high school career to when you figured out that you could be pretty good at this football thing. Was it, was your sophomore year? I know you had a great junior season. That's when the offers started rolling in. But when did this football dream become real for you, or did it happen earlier in your life?
I kind of knew going into my junior year. I just didn't know it would get this big for me. I kind of figured I would get a couple of G5s or something like that, but especially after the first game, how I blew up, I mean, it was pretty crazy. And just seeing where it took off during the off season was just another level. So it was nothing but blessings, honestly.
And when did you think that your game took a step to the next level? Like, how have you grown? And I saw you that first game. I covered that first game in the Alamo Dome where y'all had that crazy win over San Antonio Johnson, and you played incredibly well. How have you grown from really that game to where you are now as a senior and getting ready to come to A&M?
Junior year to senior year, it was, for me personally, it was like a big flip. It was more of a plays being there for me. Junior year, senior year is more of me making plays, just knowing what I did last year. It seems more of game planning against me, so having to just make plays on my own and just trying to create stuff for my own teammates at the same time too. I mean, it was a big difference, but I mean, I felt like just going into that season, I kept the same workout routine and I did everything the same, and I just felt I got better, more confident, more faster. Things slowed down. I mean, you're a senior, so you automatically feel better than everybody.
And you commit to Texas A&M in the summer. Obviously, the Aggies go through the coaching change. You kind of looked at maybe visiting some other places, but in the end, you come back to Texas A&M with Mike Elko and you sign. What was it, man, about, take the football out of it. What was it about Texas A&M and College Station that drew you in?
I don't know, something about College Station. It's just a good home vibe to me. It was from my first visit. My first visit really left a great impression, even though it really didn't start off that well because it rained. But it just left a piece, I don't know, it just sat right in my heart. So, honestly, it was somewhere I could really call home, whether it had football in it or not.
And then the coaching change, and where was your mind at whenever they decided to move on from Jimbo Fisher, and where were you at in terms of your thinking at that moment?
It was pretty crazy. I remember I woke up from my hotel and I saw the news, but I didn't think it was real. And I still thought it was Saturday for some reason. Then I realized what all happened. I kind of just called a bunch of the guys who was there, like Dalen and Terry. We all came to my room. We just really started talking and really just sharing what was on our mind and how we felt about it.
And then so you make the decision to stick with A&M after talking with Mike Elko, and you visited another official visit to A&M this past weekend. What can you tell us about your first impressions about Coach Elko and why he gave you the confidence to stick with Texas A&M?
Confidence, I mean, just the news off what I heard about him so far. I remember when he first got hired, I texted A.J. Johnson, and he was just telling me nothing but great things about how he kind of blew up his career and stuff like that. And so kind of just trusting in that, knowing that, like, A.J. was special. I was a big fan of his game. And when he was in college, especially at A&M, he was my favorite safety. So just hearing good words from him and knowing that he runs like a system, especially with me as a safety, I can go in and attack and eat. It's really a big bonus for me. And he's just like, I don't know, he don't really got emotions to me. He's just like really a plain guy, just happy and sad, happy and mad. He looks just the same.
Mm-hmm. And did you get a chance? I don't know. Like, do you have a relationship with DeMarvin Leal? Because DeMarvin really, he played and flourished under Coach Elko. I didn't know if you'd gotten a chance to talk to Marv about his experience with Coach Elko.
Talk to him, no. I remember when I saw him after my commitment, they tried to get him to talk to me, but he was like, it was just no point. He didn't want to like put a burden on me because it was a pretty stressful experience when it got down to my top 2. So he didn't want to put stress on me trying to figure out where I wanted to go. He just wanted me to follow my heart. So he told me that after I saw him, which I really appreciated.
All right, so it's done. You're coming to Texas A&M now. Y'all made some huge additions to the class yesterday out of Florida, and I believe you have some kind of background with Isaiah Williams. Is that correct? Because I know he grew up in San Antonio, right?
Yeah. I remember he was down there. He was talking to me where I lived, and he told me he used to live down there. So it was pretty crazy. We used to live around the same area at the time, but then he moved. But no, I never knew him before then, but it was good to see a two-time face, I guess, for him.
And so what are you looking forward to about getting to College Station and getting to work with this group of guys that you just signed with yesterday?
Competition, honestly. I mean, I'm ready to compete, really to push myself to another level. I mean, I think that's what our whole class is made off of. I think we're all ready to show ourselves, especially with coming to A&M and knowing what, I guess, the stigma is around us from the past seasons and flipping that.
All right, dude. Well, Myles, I really appreciate the time, man. Congratulations again, and look forward to seeing you in College Station here soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's Texas A&M signee now. It's getting tough to me to differentiate between signee and commitment. Myles Davis. Really appreciate him taking the time this morning to talk to us. He said he woke up pretty early, so he could join us at whatever time I needed him, and I need him in the 8 o'clock hour. And you hesitate sometimes, Luke. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I hesitate sometimes to ask teenagers or guys of the late high school, college generation to be up and at 'em at 8 o'clock in the morning. Although you do a great job, you're up here early.
Thank you. Yeah,
so I don't mean to throw that all on you.
No, but it's pretty accurate of our generation.
I slept in when I was like 18 to 20. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, before you've got like a real job and like if you don't have an 8 a.m., like you totally can sleep in. You deserve to sleep in. But now, it's grind time. I'm sure, Brawny, your 12 kids would say this. It's like all about your bag or whatever other cringe words you like to use around the office.
They help keep me hip,
Yeah.
But no, it's crazy because I'm still at that age where I can remember being in college, and it still doesn't seem like that long ago, even though it was. And I can remember telling myself at that age, like, I'll never be the guy that wakes up at 6:30 because they can't sleep in. I'll always be able to sleep in. Like, I said stupid crap like that, and I'm going to tell you I was wrong. Because at 6:30, whether I got an alarm or not, whether I stayed up late the night before or not, it doesn't matter. At 6:30, my feet are hitting the floor, and I've got to get up and get moving. And, I don't know if my fiance always likes that, but that's the way that it goes as you get older. But it's one of those cool things that, at one point in my life, I didn't want to turn into my father. Now I couldn't have a better honor. Somebody say, hey, you're turning into your dad. Cool. He's a great man. So, it's crazy how your mind kind of shifts on things like that. So, all right, we're going to end this segment here, bottom of the hour. Billy Liucci, who knows? On phone, in studio, your guess is as good as mine. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Bottom of the 8 o'clock hour, Ryan Brauninger filling in for David Nuno. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. This is the Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. And we are in the Rollo Insurance Studios. And I don't know what's the deal with Billy, Nick?
We're probably going to give him a ring.
Okay, we'll
So
give him a buzz, see if he's by his phone. But we had some potentially massive news come out of the ever-changing college football landscape this morning. According to Ross Dellinger of The Athletic, at a meeting Friday, FSU Board of Trustees, the FSU being Florida State, Board of Trustees will discuss the Seminoles' conference future, and the result of the meeting is expected to produce a legal filing serving as an initial step in an exit from the ACC's grant of rights. Sources tell Yahoo Sports, follow-up tweet to that. It's been known for months now that Florida State, as well as Clemson and other ACC programs, have studied the league's grant of rights in an attempt to find an exit path. You'll recall that 7 ACC teams explored an exit dissolution in the spring. Luch, pretty big news coming out of Tallahassee this morning after the Seminoles get snubbed from the playoffs, and it seems like that was just the poke that they needed to get the ball rolling even further on an exit from the Atlantic Coast Conference. I don't know if you've gotten to see this news or have any kind of reaction to it, but not really surprising as the college football landscape tends to change, month to month right now.
Feels like a taking our ball and going home moment, doesn't it?
A little bit, sure. Yeah.
And absolutely. I mean, not going home, though. They'd be going, in their opinion, and almost certainly so, to greener pastures. I mean, they'd be going to a better home. Probably, I don't know, probably the big, it may very well be the Big Ten. I don't know if it said anything about that in the article. I just caught the tail end of what you're reading. Got some other things I'm chasing down, in terms of college football in general today. But, no, that's a real significant development because you expect once Florida State does that, Clemson's going. Then you have to look at schools that are really prize catches out of that league in the eyes of these conferences, which are North Carolina, Virginia, Miami would likely, try to jump ship as well. So, but Virginia and North Carolina are viewed as real prizes, particularly UNC, Bronny. I said that, when the SEC took A&M, the dream scenario would have been to add the Aggies in the West and UNC in the East. That was the dream, and that was the preference, and they weren't able to get that done. So that was kind of where that was at the time, and there's still no difference. I still think North Carolina is the number one prize in that entire conference, and that includes Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. But, yeah, I mean, it'd be tough to see that conference surviving as it is. A lot of times it takes one domino and things start to kind of unravel, and that could be what we're seeing today.
This is not something I had written down on my topic sheet here, but where are you at on the state of college football in general compared to where you were maybe when you started doing this job?
Well, when I started doing the job, I didn't know much about the quote-unquote state of college football, right? But looking back, I had started, A&M had just kind of joined the Big 12. Where am I at? I'm as low as I've ever been in terms of confidence that the sport will get it right. I'm as low as I've ever been in the way of any kind of structure and any kind of my confidence level is as low as it's ever been in any type of governing body, namely the NCAA. I think a lot of the sports media that covers it nationally, it's pretty disgusting. The push that they make for certain programs and don't make for many, 90% of the sport. And that includes pretty big programs too. And we're not just talking A&M here. I mean, there's a handful of programs that pushes for, and then the rest, it's embarrassing. And that's a lot of the national media. And there are a bunch of individuals that are incredible at what they do, but just in general, just that the group think, the push, it's just so there's nothing. Tell you what, the only thing I like about conference realignment, I mean, look what happened to the Pac-12. It's disgusting. It's sad. It's actually sad. NIL, transfer portal, it's unbelievable, Brauninger. It is a coach's salaries, if you want to say that. So I just think the whole thing just spiraled completely out of control. And I don't think there's any way to rein it in. And my hope is just that it doesn't ruin the sport.
Well,
I keep trying to wrap my head around like 2 mega conferences, and it's hard for me to envision a way in which I think, oh, this is cool. I like that. The only thing I'm excited about right now in college sports, particularly college football, the only thing I'm excited about in college football right now is the growth to the 12-team playoff. I'm really looking forward to that and seeing how that works.
Well, in an effort to keep things from spiraling out of control in College Station, Mike Elko has been on the job 3 weeks. Signing day yesterday, they inked 12 players. He also made some comments in his post-signing day press conference about anticipatory timing on a DC announcement. Where do you want to start with this thing? We can go wherever you want to. You want to start with the players they signed, the late additions in Tampa, or would you like to talk a little coaching stuff?
Not much coaching stuff right now. I do think people are way off on names so far. I've said that on the board a little bit, but I think they're way off on names. I think it'll come as a little bit of a surprise just because it's just a name people haven't mentioned. As far as the recruiting class, I love the way they didn't finish it out. I think they're yet to finish it out. I'm talking about the early period. I think we'll be watching, Tristan Jernigan's decision very closely on Friday, and I still feel good about A&M's chances there. And then Dalen Evans is one that, makes it seem as if he'll wait, but I don't think there's any way to know for sure if that means a wait until today or Friday, right before the window closes, or if that means a wait until the February signing period. I think that's TBD, right? So a couple pretty big ones on the defensive side of the ball that could really, you end up getting both of those, and you start seeing this class climb in a way that, look, it looks a lot more impressive if you get those two guys, even if you get one and Dalen waits it out until February, but you start to look at that class compared to that first 8-man haul that A&M signed a few weeks in under Jimbo, and you realize that they did a pretty good job. The first thing I like about it is they didn't scramble and race out there and just start adding a lot of bread, Brony, and guys that deep down in our heart of hearts, we know, like, hey, if this program gets where it wants to be, these guys, they're going to out-recruit these guys. Like, these guys aren't going to have spots. And you didn't see them go and do that just for the sake of rounding out a class. And I don't think you'll see them do that in January either, leading up to February, which is great. It's also what you can do thanks to the portal.
Yeah, and I think we do need to talk portal needs at some point. But one of the positions that they added to yesterday, and they've done it in the portal as well, that they I think it flew under the radar that they had to make additions to, and I spoke about this in the opening segment this morning, is wide receiver. And they go and flip Isaiah Williams from the University of Florida. He signs with the Aggies yesterday. Billy, going into this bowl game next Wednesday, they've got 4 scholarship receivers. I wasn't sure in the status of Jordan Anthony, but they've got 4 scholarship receivers on the roster currently. So they had to address this via the portal and high school.
Well, in terms of Williams, I've talked to some people on the inside, now that he's signed. They are really excited about him. They are really excited about him, and also not just Isaiah Williams as a signee, but Isaiah Williams as an impact true freshman in this conference. That's how high they are on the Tampa product, and the late flip from Florida. So that's pretty interesting. The returns I was getting back there, it kind of made me perk up a little bit and go, oh, I like this tape and stuff. And when I started to hear that, I go, okay, that's pretty interesting to hear them speak that glowingly. So that one they needed. I think they need. I love the two guys they added in the portal. I especially love Louisiana Tech and Allen. I think you look at his tape, I think he's an instant impact guy and a guy that competes to start right away. But I still think they need more. And we'll talk portal in a minute. But I'm so fired up. I'm so fired up about what they added as an edge rusher yesterday. And I think he was the guy I was talking about Tuesday night when I was saying, hey, if they're going to add somebody and sign somebody that I'm really fired up about, and I think people are going to underrate him still. And like you said, you think the national people underrate Solomon, right? Like, I think he should be, one of those national top 100 guys without question. When you look at his tape, you look at what he brings to the table from a frame standpoint. I think he is an impact edge rusher that they signed who could really, really thrive in the Southeastern Conference. And this is a guy that Jimbo and Elijah were all over. And then, Elko comes in and Spencer Sanders. Spencer Sanders, gosh. Spencer Sanders is not doing anything right now. Sean Spencer, we're extremely high on and familiar with anyway already. So I think that's a big add that people aren't talking about enough from yesterday.
Sure. Okay, when we come back, what's your plan? You on the phone? Are you coming in?
Phone. We're going to go walk the dog.
Okay, so Billy will be on the phone. On the other side of the break, we'll do the last segment of the hour, and we'll talk a little bit of transfer portal as well as get his thoughts on some of the stuff happening across the country. A lot more to get to with Billy Liucci. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers.
Merry Christmas.
Season's greetings to you.
All right, got about 5 minutes before we have a hard out at 56:30. I'm saying that out loud so we can understand that the keeping Billy to this clock is going to be a lot of fun with him on the phone. Back to the Brian Foley Law Hotline. By the way, I'm Ryan Brauninger, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Brian Foley Law Hotline to continue our conversation with Billy Liucci. And we need to get into some portal stuff, Billy, because the A&M has been on a little bit of a run in the transfer portal with adding players. But Mike Elko said yesterday in his press conference that they are still allocating spots for both high school and transfer portal prospects. And if you've been paying attention to the site, we've been saying there are potentially some big names going in here soon that we think A&M would have a good shot at. So where are you at on A&M's portal approach, and what do you think it looks like going forward?
Well, I don't think they're close to being done, Bronny. And I think one thing I don't know that even we've talked about much is how about the portal after bowl game? And that is going to be a mad scramble. And I think that's where you're going to see the staff start to shine because there'll be more together. I think you're going to see a lot of additions very quickly here. We know there'll be a couple of additions in town and ready to roll almost immediately after Duke's bowl game here in a couple of days. So in this point, and I think you'll see Elko, obviously, like he said, with the DC, this will be pretty much a complete staff. When you think about the Duke staffers coming over and he makes a DC hire, you're looking at one or two positions left. And I imagine he's going to fill those very quickly as well. So should probably have a full staff by the time these bowls are over. And with each game that ends, you're probably seeing some guys going portal. And I think you're going to see A&M be very active, and they're going to have to be. They're going to have to be in search of another corner or two. They're going to have to be in search of another linebacker, I think, at a minimum. And I think still, certainly for another wide receiver in light of the Evan Stewart news from a couple of days ago. I don't think people were sitting there counting on Evan's word that he was staying. I think everybody knew better than that. But he was still on the roster, on campus. And it was, as long as there was a chance, there was a chance. But they knew if he left, you'd probably have to go add another receiver in the portal. So I think corner, linebacker, receiver, and then certainly best available at certain positions. If you see the right guy come up, I think, you've lost a lot on the D-line. There's certainly room to address there as well, whether that be a pass rusher to replace a Fadil Diggs. You've got some big 280 to 300-pound guys that can play inside, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you could add a run stuff and interior guy as well. So whatever's out there, but I think those are the needs, and that's a lot. I don't think, it'd be nice to see them be able to address every single one of them, but if they can check almost every one of those boxes, I think they'll be feeling really good about next year's squad.
Got about a minute and a half, Billy. Give me one name that A&M signed yesterday that you think maybe either flying a little bit under the radar or a kid that you're really intrigued to watch early in his career here in College Station.
For me, that's Jordan Price. I think because he was so early, and we didn't talk about it enough, a couple guys, him and Blake Ivey. Because Blake was so quiet before and after he submitted. But those were two really big recruiting victories, Ronnie, that we just haven't talked a lot about those guys since they submitted. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they were out there right now, you'd have virtually every school in the country fight for them because that was the case at the time of their commitment. So I think Blake Ivey up front and Pride in the secondary are two guys that really intrigued the heck out of me that they signed yesterday.
All right, Luch, appreciate you stopping in, man. On the other side of the break, we'll head to the 9 o'clock hour. We'll have some clips from Mike Elko. You get a lot of me, you'll get a lot of Luke, and you'll get a lot of Nick on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Billy's got the message board all in a tizzy, trying to guess who the defensive coordinator is. He's dropped hints yesterday. That was followed up by Mike Elko's press conference, which he said he thinks that should wrap up here in the next day or so. And then he comes on TexAgs radio and says it's a name that nobody's mentioned. And so now everybody's doing the best they can to pick a winner and pick the right name out of a massive hat. So it'll be interesting to follow. Obviously, Billy thinks he's got a good idea of which way that thing's headed, but and is dropping clues along the way. But it's always fun to see how people react to Billy's information on radio and when it's taken to the message board. I'm Ryan Brauninger, sitting in the host chair today for David Nuno. I would want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. I don't think that I will be on the radio between now and Christmas. I have not done any Christmas shopping at all.
You and me both, brother.
Really?
None.
Made me feel better. Luke?
Also none.
How much do you do, Luke?
I'll get a couple gifts here and there, but nothing too crazy. But
the budget for me this year is a little strapped. Trying to get married in January, which, Nick, you now know, getting married costs money.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, so understood. We're going through it together.
Yeah, the wallet.
And you know what you don't talk about is you add a whole other side of the family now you got to buy Christmas presents for.
I know.
So that's
it's I hope my future father-in-law and brother-in-law and mother-in-law will understand as well, because they're footing the bill for some of this wedding too. So it may be a thin Christmas around the Brauninger and Carpenter households. But, it's about what you get, not how much it costs. So hopefully I can put some thought into this and come up with some ideas and impress people on a budget with the thoughtfulness of my Christmas gifts. The last time I think A&M played, it was the last time A&M played in the Texas Bowl. My grandmother, who has been an A&M fan her whole life, had never gotten to see the Aggies play. We surprised her with tickets to that Texas Bowl against Kansas State. And then the video kind of went out across Southeast Texas and had some great Aggies step up and get her on the sideline pregame. She took pictures with the core. She took pictures with Cullen Gillespie. Really cool moment for our family. So these bowl games, and one of the things that I have written down is like, how do we fix bowl season? And I don't know that there is a way to do that. Billy said he is more disgusted now with the state of college football than he ever has been. And I want to agree with him. Like, the only thing the NCAA has done right, in my opinion, that I can remember over the last decade plus is make the move from the BCS to a playoff system, and then the playoff system from 4 to 12. You can very much make a very cogent, apt argument that they should have done the 12-team playoff from the beginning, but whatever. Sometimes it takes baby steps to get to where you want to go. Except when things are rolling in the other directions and you make massive overhauls to your transfer policy, you allow NIL to come in unchecked at the state level, and you do nothing about it when everybody could see it coming from a million miles away. You chose to sit on your hands and let that be governed by state entities, which are now different across state boundaries and what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So they've definitely made the bed that we're in college football and in college sports in general. So for the one piece of action that they've made that has been right, which is moving to this 12-team playoff, they've got a million reasons why you shouldn't ever trust them again. And that's on a macro level and a micro level. We don't have time to get into the micro stuff, but on the macro level, where it's affecting every program in college football every day, they've completely swung and missed the boat on a numerous amount of issues. Now, where are you two guys on this? Like, are you okay with where college football's at?
I mean, there's nothing I personally can do about it, but it does suck what's been changing. And another thing about that is, the first playoff game is going to be like a year from today, and early signing, it's like on early signing day. So how are they going to work that out if teams are playing their first playoff game on early signing day? You're taking options away from the kids. You're just hurting the programs. and all the staff members that are involved. I feel like it's now all about money and ratings and TV and matchups, and not the college football that I grew up with, and neither that you grew up with, Bronny, either.
But to your point, though, Luke, them moving the early signing day there's no cost. Like, there's no cost cut to that. Like, how does that affect their bottom line?
It shouldn't.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just do away with the early signing period, move it back a few weeks, or I would do away with it altogether. Let's go back to February. And if the kids want to early enroll, then they can sign their grant aid paperwork and they can early enroll. There's no skin off anybody's back. We can announce Ashton Funk is an early enrollee. He's not going to sign a letter of intent because he's already going to be on campus in February. You're right. The addition of the 12-team playoff to the current recruiting calendar, I don't know how any college coach is going to manage that, especially one that's either A, going through a coaching change like A&M is right now, what Mike Elko has had to sift through. It's like 9 miles of crap, and once you get to the end of that 9 miles, there's 9 more miles. Like, there's just a little small break, and then you've got to go do it again. And it's not just here. It's at every college football program right now because of the state of the transfer portal, NIL, re-recruiting your current roster, and also having to do that within 3 weeks of an early signing period, in which you're walking into a situation where you know none of the current commits, none of the recruits. You don't know what the previous staff's recruiting board looked like. It's been a very commendable job by Mike Elko because he's so organized and so efficient with his time, and he's got a plan. We're going to play a clip here in just a second about him talking about his plan and not trying to sacrifice a short-term splash for his long-term goals, or not trying to sacrifice the long-term goals for the benefit of a short-term splash on signing day. And I thought that was really forward-thinking and gave us a very clear idea of what Mike Elko is looking to do and the way he's looking to run his organization through the recruiting lens while in College Station. But you add in that early signing day to now trying to get ready for a playoff game. Like, how on earth do you expect these college coaches to be able to do all that? And I know they're paid handsomely, and I know that they're making more money than most of us will ever see. But that's still asking an awful lot to understand the amount of time and energy it takes to put into this recruiting stuff. And just look what happened at Florida yesterday. Now, they ended up signing DJ Lagway after a lot of discussions between A&M and USC and even U of H and Clemson, all there very late. They ended up signing DJ Lagway, and they also signed LJ McCrary, who was their 5-star defensive lineman that early in the day said he was going to wait until February to sign. He ends up signing late yesterday. But outside of that, it was a giant mare's nest yesterday for Billy Napier in Gainesville. So you're asking that he's not going through a coaching change. They don't even have a bowl game to get ready for. And he's having to deal with all of that. Now, some of that is him making the bed that he's laying in, to reuse an analogy I said earlier. Because they were so poor on the field, it's made it really tough for him on the recruiting trail. But still, that's all he had to do. He let go of a couple of coaches, position coaches, to A&M's benefit with Sean Spencer. But what was it yesterday, Luke? What did Florida's signing day end up looking like?
Absolutely horrible. I can tell you in the last month, they've lost a 5-star cornerback, 4 4-stars on the defensive line, and a 4-star safety. And it seemed like every hour there was a player flipping Florida to Georgia, Florida to Miami, Florida to A&M.
Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn also cleaned up from that class. So they were just losing a lot. They're Billy Napier's first class from 2022. Over half of that signing class is in the portal. They lost ETN, Kamari Wilson, Chris McClellan. I mean, he's taking incredible hits, one after the other. His seat is hotter than hot. And they lost their last 5 games this year to not make it to a bowl game. And their last 5 games of next season are Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. So, Bronny, my question to you is, will Billy Napier even make it to those last 5 games next season?
Those are questions that were being asked on the recruiting trail to a lot of their top targets. And you're sitting there looking at it, and the Florida sources that I was speaking with were very adamant that a lot of Billy Napier's future hung in the balance with the decision of DJ Lagway. And I'm sitting there going, how's that fair on the kid? An 18-year-old from the state of Texas. The University of Florida football program is hanging in the balance because of one kid? And I know DJ's super talented, and I think he's an incredible kid. I love him on the field and off the field. I've been a huge DJ Lagway fan. But those are fair questions to ask, is how much pressure are they going to put on this kid to come in and be the savior of the program when they're jumping off the ship at a rapid pace in Gainesville? So you're right, Luke. What does their record look like next year? And if it looks like everybody anticipates it looking like, what does that further do to the Florida football program? I don't know. It's a really tight spot, and a lot of people are saying, is this what A&M's class would have looked like had they held on to Jimbo Fisher? I don't know that. There's no way to know that, and I won't speculate on it. I can kind of give you an idea of where I thought it was headed, and I do think it was the right time to make a move, and I'm very excited that Mike Elko is now calling the shots in Aggieland because he is extremely intelligent. He has a plan. I think he's motivated to get this place to reach its potential. He was here for 4 years. He saw how pretty of a ship that it was, how pretty of a mansion that it was, but he also saw some structural things that, man, if I were back here as the head guy, I could probably clean that up and help further advance this place to getting it closer to its potential. So I like that he was the hire because he's seen all that, and now he can have a chance to influence those outcomes and influence those potential structural problems and fix it and get the ball rolling in the right direction for this football program like we all desperately want it to. But it's just what he's had to deal with and sift through. I've said it a bunch, and he alluded to it yesterday in his presser. Drinking through a fire hose probably doesn't even do it justice. So, Nick, I don't know. Do you have that clip pulled up? Did you scream yet? Okay. I like when Nick screams through the wall instead of using his microphone.
That's just quicker.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, so let's go ahead and pull up that clip of Mike Elko talking about, just not adding bodies for the sake of adding bodies and also never losing sight of his long-term plan for this place in an effort to get a short-term bump on the recruiting trail.
The group that we put together is really about quality and not quantity. And I think when you're a new coach and a new staff, you have to make some serious decisions. And I think you can do a lot of things in your first 18 days that can really set your program back for a long time. You can compromise values. You can go out and chase things that can make a splash. But at the end of the day, those things don't have long-term value. And what we wanted to focus on was quality. And we wanted to make sure that the young men that we added to this program represented the direction we want Texas A&M football to go. And in that end, we did a phenomenal job.
Okay, can I ask, Nick, you and Luke, I want to ask y'all's opinion on something. What are your thoughts when you listen to a Mike Elko press conference? He's only done 2, but his introductory one and then yesterday, how would you describe what you've seen and heard from him and how it makes you feel about the direction of the program?
I feel like there's a solid plan in place. He comes off very, cerebral, very well thought out. As he's where did he go to college again? He's
Penn.
Yeah, so he's a little smarter than me. So he feels a little bit more structured, I guess, is how that makes me feel, and that's a good thing.
Luke?
Yeah, also he talks slower than Jimbo Fisher. I've never had to transcribe a Jimbo Fisher press conference or do quotes or Twitter for it, but I know people who have. Kay Nagley and Richard tell me all the time that I'm very lucky that I never had to do a Jimbo press conference. So that is one thing. Mike Elko talks slower, and also he just sounds more calculated, and it really does seem like he has a plan and he means what he says. And also it also kind of helps that he's proven it here already, so he knows what A&M is like. He knows how to speak to the crowd and please the masses. But so he's winning these press conferences, but also it's not just winning the press conferences. He's showing it on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal, and with recruiting the current roster. So I feel hopeful, more hopeful than I probably was a couple months ago.
I just think he expresses himself. He comes across as very honest. Like, there's not a lot of coach speak. There's hardly any cliches in his press conference. And that speaks to what you said, Nick, about just his general.
Hey, we got some breaking news if you'd like me to drop it on you. Billy Bomb, per Billy Liucci on Twitter. Breaking, Texas A&M headman Mike Elko lands his DC in former Florida assistant and one-time UNC coordinator Jay Bateman. And that's live on TexAgs.com as well.
Yeah, I may have gotten wind of that yesterday from Mr. Billy Liucci. I'm not trying to take any credit there. That's all Billy. We knew he would have that first. So Jay Bateman, former Florida assistant, one-time UNC coordinator, and a very highly regarded recruiter, is headed to College Station. So just to add to Billy Napier's misery, Luke, A&M goes and nabs his linebacker coach. And that was something that Mike Elko said yesterday, that it was going to be a linebacker coach that could call his defense. And those two do have some overlap. I believe it was at Richmond back in 2004, 2006. If you want to pull up his
2004. I'm looking at his history. He was the assistant secondary coach.
And so they had some overlap there at Richmond, which is funny enough, where Mikey Elko, Coach Elko's son, is now playing college baseball at Richmond for the Spiders. But if you look at Jay Bateman's history, I think he was up for a Broyles Award. He got Army into the top 5 nationally defensively.
Yeah, he was a former Broyles Award finalist.
Okay, so I believe that was with the Black Knights, right, at Army. So really interesting hire. Obviously a guy that Mike Elko has a history with and is going to call Mike Elko's defense. And with the qualities that we just discussed about Mike Elko having, cerebralness, intellect, a plan, and he talked yesterday, again, I keep going back, he dropped so many tidbits of information in that presser yesterday when he talked about the hiring of Colin Klein and how he just locked himself in his office and watched tape and broke down tape of all these potential offensive coordinators and guys he was going to target. That was how he went about this process. I'm guessing that process was very similar on the defensive side. The difference is because of his background in understanding defense and wanting somebody that's going to call his defense without him having to worry about it, so where he can manage the program, not the defense, the program. I would imagine, like R.C. Slocum did during his tenure at A&M, he'll have some say-so in the defense, but in no way, shape, or form do I think Mike Elko intends to manage the defense. Mike Elko wants to manage the program. So Jay Bateman in as the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. As Billy said, we are anticipating a lot more staff hires once Duke concludes their season, which happens on Saturday in their bowl game. I'm sure the masses on TexAgs and the 12th man is scurrying to do all kind of information, background checks of their own on all of these guys, but specifically Jay Bateman, because as Billy said, some of these guesses had been way off. So, hey, Nick, I'm glad that Billy chose not to join us for another 30 minutes because he might not have gotten the news.
Yeah, good point. Maybe he expected it, but yeah, that's fun. It's fun to break some news like that live on air. But so I guess we can talk about this on the other side because we got to hit a break here soon. But you got to help me figure out what's left for the staff because you got your 2 big coordinators, right?
Yes.
And position coaches, where they stand there. So
yeah, it's hard because there's not been a lot of formal announcements. You know what I'm saying? Where you've seen graphics and stuff come out. Obviously, Tommy Moffitt, but other than just reports that these guys are coming, we haven't seen a bunch of official statements from Texas A&M that this is what the new staff looks like. So I will preface what we're going to talk about on the other side of the break with that. This is all just speculation until it becomes official. So coaching staff, more recruiting stuff. We're getting ready for Aaron Torres at the bottom of the hour. We roll right along on TexAgs Radio. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. 9:23 on the Zone or TexAgs or YouTube. However you're joining us, we appreciate your viewership, your listenership. I'm Ryan Brauninger filling in for David Nuno, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. In the Rollo Insurance Studios, we are efforting, radio word, efforting Billy Liucci on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. Nick, do we have an update on Billy? He's on. Oh, there we go. Luch, all right, dude. So you take a little break and you break some news. What do you got for us on the Jay Bateman hire?
A break?
What's that?
That's what we call a break.
It's a break. What do you got for us on Jay Bateman, the hire? What do you know about him? I mentioned in the last segment a history with Mike Elko at Richmond, and obviously a guy that understands what Coach Elko wants to do on that side of the football here in College Station.
That Richmond staff, pretty interesting when you start digging in. That staff not only had Mike Elko, the head coach at Texas A&M, it had Jay Bateman, the now defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. It had the current defensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders, and now that name's slipping my mind, and also had Florida State defensive coordinator Adam Fuller. So you start to trace, when you know that A&M reached out and shot a flyer there towards Tallahassee early in the process, you start to trace and see what Mike Elko was looking for. He was looking for, I think the word you said a second ago, familiarity. He was looking for someone that was like-minded in how they attack offenses and what they're going to do defensively. And a big part of the reason why is because, like he said yesterday, it's going to be a Mike Elko defense. It's going to be a Mike Elko, Jay Bateman defense. Those things are almost exactly the same in terms of not how Bateman will call the game on Saturdays, but just in terms of philosophy, scheme, approach to attacking offenses. And yes, he's going to be the one calling games on Saturdays. So Elko needed a very high level of trust that they're, again, like I said, the word like-minded, that they're going to be attacking in a way that Elko believes in and knows works. So again, Mike Elko defense led by Jay Bateman and called on Saturdays by Bateman, which from talking to Elko is very important to him. You know, he wants to be able to be a head coach on Saturdays and not be in the weeds and distracted by other things.
Yeah, this is a name that I think you've been on and tracking for a couple of weeks, and man, what a 24, 48 hours for Billy Napier in Florida. And Luch, it looks like, I mean, I know they held on to DJ Lagway and LJ McCrary, but times are tough for the Gators, and it looks like with that schedule next year, they could be in for some rocky roads. So how do you think this all came together? Was it quickly? Was it over time? Was this a guy that you'd heard for a few weeks or what?
Not a few weeks. Certainly, I don't know. I didn't tell you the name, right? But I told you in Nuno. I told you yesterday, but I told you in Nuno at the gym a few days ago that we could be getting close, and that's when I heard that news. And that was probably today's Thursday. That was probably late last week that I told that to you guys. Mm-hmm. So, close to a week or so. That was kind of the first time. It wasn't the first time his name came up. That was when it was kind of, I figured that was who it was going to be. So we're talking, I think he went, Brian, you know Elko, okay? He's not going to do anything without putting a lot of thought into it. And I think he was deliberately waiting till after signing day to get that one done. He did not want to be super distracted from keeping the roster together, recruiting, the portal, but he also wanted to give that search due diligence. He wanted to, do it justice and not just stay kind of like what you would say in-house or however you want to put it. But at the same time, he wanted that familiarity and somebody he believed in, somebody he thought would be really good. So he went and got Bateman, and like I said, I think that's been about a week or so. I think he did a lot of research on. I know he did a lot of research on a lot of NFL guys. Was looking into that. So there's been
There's been kind of plenty of looking around. I mentioned earlier Avalos, right, who was at Boise State as the head coach, former 1 year, I think, as an Oregon DC, went to TCU. That was a guy that they kicked the tires on and didn't think he was the right fit. And there were a couple more. A lot of these names that came up were never really, they never got anywhere that he kicked the tires on. He looked at a couple of super young guys. That felt, I think, to him like he would have to be a little more hands-on in terms of, when live bullets are firing in SEC games, and I don't think that was really what he was wanting to do. So, that kind of takes you through a little bit through his mindset in the process. I'm sure we'll get more out of him when we talk during the bowl presser and have him on soon. So, but that takes you a little bit into the mindset. And by the way, here's one thing about Bateman. Now, I don't know. I think probably based on what's happened at Florida, which you just alluded to with their recruiting class falling apart, I know when I got wind of his name, I looked him up, and as of like 2 days ago, he was a number 4 ranked recruiter in the country. As far as he was linebackers coach at Florida. I think for either this past season or for the past 2 seasons, right? He was linebackers coach at Florida. He had been to DC at North Carolina, actually against Texas A&M in that Orange Bowl. But if you look, he was number 4, but that class has fallen apart to the point that I think he had dropped out like every other Florida recruiter. But I think that has a lot more to do with Billy Napier and where that thing's trending than Bateman, who is, by the way, as I make a joke, but he is considered, he's considered one of the elite defensive recruiters in the country. And you've seen what Sean Spencer can do in a very short period of time as well. Yeah. So again, that I think had a lot more to do with Napier and that thing falling apart.
Yeah, and it's certainly, if you listen to the way Elko described him getting to Colin Klein and how much research that he did in his office by himself on tendencies and all that kind of stuff, the difference was, as you have said, it's going to be a Mike Elko defense. As Coach Elko said, it's going to be his defense. So finding somebody that he felt comfortable calling with it. And Patrick Graham is the name of that Raiders defensive coordinator who you said was on the staff with
Patrick
him
Graham.
At Richmond. And also one thing about Jay Bateman, Broyles Award finalist with Army as the defensive coordinator. I think he had the Black Knights at number 3 in total defense one year.
Yeah, those Army defenses were something now. I think we remember what those Army offenses looked like, where I'm not sure how many plays those defenses were on the field, but you watch them and they were ass-kicking defense is what they were. You'd watch Army play like a Notre Dame, and I wonder, I haven't looked, what years was he at Army?
I think 2017. Let me look that up. I think that was the year he won
It'd be interesting to see if he was at Army when they played Kyler Murray and Oklahoma and gave them fits. I think that game was basically, I think it went to overtime.
So
they kept getting.
Yeah. Bateman was named a finalist for the Broyles Award in 2018. In his tenure with Army, he improved the Black Knights from 91st overall in 2014 to 8th in the country in 2018.
Okay, so 2014. So 2014 to 2018, I would say that's definitely the Kyler Murray years at OU, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm almost positive. So anyway, the reason I say that is because that was a game where they essentially held OU to I think OU ended up winning that game in overtime, but I think in regulation they held them to like 20 points with Kyler, who they were scoring 50 or 60 every game, it felt like.
All right, Luch, nice job breaking the news, and I'm guessing we're going to have a lot more staff news on probably sometime this weekend as Duke finishes up their bowl game.
Yeah, I think we'll have a steady flow of information this weekend coming out of Durham, and steady flow coming out of Durham, and then again, I think the spot There might be a second spot open. I think we're kind of, you and I, and I've said it, I'm kind of expecting, Trooper Taylor, probably one other offensive coach to come over. We've obviously been talking about Cushing, too. I guess he's not technically here yet, so I'd say those two on offense and probably a third. I've got an eye on Doherty, the tight ends coach, watching that one closely, tight end special teams, and then maybe one more spot. And I think receiver will be open. I think receiver is one that'll be kind of an outside hire. So still a little work to do, but I think once this Duke stuff plays itself out, I think you'll look up and see a pretty full staff with maybe one or two more additions before he rounds it out completely.
All right, Luch, enjoy your weekend, man.
All right, buddy, you too. Good work.
All right, that's Billy Liucci, TexAgs co-owner and executive editor on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. When we come back, we'll go back out to the hotline and join great friend of the program, Aaron Torres, get his thoughts on this Florida State news, signing day, all the moving pieces in college football as we get ready for Christmas and the new year. You're listening to TexAgs Radio. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, we're back. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I want to thank our next guest for sticking around and joining us a little bit later than normal. Fox Sports national radio host, best-selling author, and podcast host, Aaron Torres, great friend of the program. AT, I appreciate you sticking with us. Had some breaking news, so we had to get Liucci on the air to talk about recent Texas A&M defensive coordinator hired, Jay Bateman. But AT, want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year ahead of time. How are we feeling going into the holiday season about the state of college football?
About the state of college football in general?
Yeah. That's been one of my questions this morning.
Well, I mean, I think it's fine. Listen, we're caught in this weird in-between where we've brought in a bunch of new rules, but it's clearly, under the construction of the past. It's almost like putting a couple new coats of paint on an old house that you need to just knock down and build up again. And so, listen, whether we like it or not, we're headed towards a world of super conferences. We're headed towards a world, frankly, where players are probably employees of the university. And I don't think it's what any of us grew up with, but I think it's kind of what we need. I mean, you even go back to signing day yesterday, you hear stories about, Jeremiah Smith committing, but he doesn't sign his paperwork because they're trying to squeeze the school for a couple more bucks of NIL. I get that this is the new world, but, I think we need to get to a place where there's salary structure. I don't know about cutting players. I don't know how I feel about that, but where we are is not sustainable. And I don't mean from a money perspective. I just mean from a wild, wild west perspective of players coming and going as they please. Anytime anybody can get what they want, they're suing for something. So the sport is always great. The on-the-field product is always great. But we are caught kind of between the way we did things and the way we're going to do things in the future. And unfortunately, it's kind of a little bit of a middle ground right now.
Aaron, I don't know if you know this, but I make my hay as a recruiting analyst. So I'm involved in a lot of this. I know you do, man. You do a great job. I appreciate that. I'm involved in the day-to-day, and I see this stuff happening and unfolding. And
do you agree with me, like with the NIL and everything?
I think it's a house of cards. And I don't know how it's coming down. Yeah. I don't know when it's coming down, but I do think it's coming down. I don't know what the gust of wind will be that will undercut it all. But it's just, to me, it's untenable in the state that it is right now. We've gotten to a point where it's pay for play. And I know you had some thoughts on the Jordan Seaton kid who had committed to Colorado a couple of weeks ago and is at IMG Academy and now looks like he is going to sign with potentially Maryland after the Terrapins were an afterthought for much of his recruitment. Like, we're just seeing a lot of that. And that might be good for the game because if it's, if the top 12 players in the country are all signing with different schools, does that lead to more parity on Saturday?
Yeah, and to go back to your initial point, Bronny, and again, you do an awesome job, and you're probably having high-level conversations that even I'm not having, to be honest, is what you said is I agree. It's not tenable. And listen, I'll do the caveat that everybody does whenever we have this conversation. Nobody is anti the players making money. That's not what this is about. What it's about is, frankly, coaches having to spend the majority of their time re-recruiting their roster, players using the transfer portal as leverage to get last-minute money. Even the guys that are not even playing on your roster having agents and trying to squeeze the school for a couple more bucks. And it's like, and by the way, all of this is still going on while they get scholarships, room and board, cost of attendance in many cases, et cetera. So, again, nobody's anti anybody getting paid, but it's just like you said, the way you phrased it, a house of cards is so right, is that there's just so much outside noise right now. And again, I hate to say it, but I think where we're headed is kind of what Chip Kelly talked about last week. What Jim Harbaugh has talked about is we need, frankly, collective bargaining. We need a salary structure. And I don't know what all that looks like. This is why we have lawyers and highly paid people like that. And so but what we're doing now, as you said, house of cards, not sustainable, however you want to frame it, it's just a crazy new world. I think the coaches are actually doing as good of a job as you can adjusting to the new world. But we just can't have players going to 3 or 4 schools over a 4-year stretch. We can't have, players basically holding the schools hostage over a couple bucks on signing day. There's got to be a better way to do it. I guess that's the only, and I don't mean to be negative because college sports is a great, fun thing that we all love. But I just bring it up to say that I just think the current structure isn't tenable.
I get asked all the time, Well, how would you change it? I've got two ways, AT, or two things I would implement that I think would curtail a lot of this. And I don't think that it's feasible to do, and I don't think it'll ever be done. But what do you think about this? One, go back to the old transfer policy that you have to sit out. If you make a undergrad decision to transfer, you must sit out a season. Number two, no NIL money can be incurred by a student athlete until December 1st of their third year on campus.
Oh, wow. So, first of all, I agree with you. And as somebody who does a lot of basketball stuff, I've talked to literally guys that are in the NBA right now. I talked to Dante DiVincenzo about it, who I think is with the Warriors. I don't even know. Obi Toppin, when he won National Player of the Year, he had redshirted 1 year. He said it was the best thing for him. And when you, God forbid, actually talk to the people that experienced it, I really don't know that I've ever talked to a player that's redshirted that hasn't seen it as a net positive, getting used to campus, getting used to school, getting used to whatever. The problem with all of this is, again, when they're non-contract employees, if my understanding is correct, and I'm not a lawyer, but basically there are laws against being able to, limit freedom of movement. I think the transfer stuff, I have said even before the one-time transfer, this is what it should be. You get one free transfer. You can transfer if you're a graduate. And you can transfer if your head coach leaves. So, Duke players shouldn't be beholden to staying at Duke because Mike Elko decided to take the Texas A&M job. Texas A&M players that came to play for Jimbo Fisher shouldn't be beholden to stay at Texas A&M because Jimbo Fisher got fired. So I'm just bringing this all up to say that feels like the very easy solution to me. And I don't get why we don't do it. And really quick, and if I'm going long, cut me off because I know we're probably up against the break. But two things. One, what people don't realize, everyone just wants these 2 or 3 time let the players do what they want. Ronnie, you know this. There is an academic component to it. And what's going to end up happening is, you transfer enough, credits don't transfer, and you're going to run out of eligibility without getting your degree, and where we go from there. And I think the other aspect, too, that I don't hear enough people talk about, everybody talks about, these mental health waivers. If your mental health is that bad, maybe you do need to sit out for a year. Maybe it is good for you to sit out for a year, focus on school, get away from the sport, spend time with family, do whatever you're doing. I have yet to hear anybody make really that argument specifically. And to your point, I don't think either of those things is going to happen, but I know you care about college sports as much as I do, and those are the conversations that aren't happening that frankly should be happening.
And I want to echo something you said. I'm all for the players getting paid. And I think you should be able to accrue as much money as you possibly are earning and are deserving, and whatever somebody's willing to pay you, that's what free market says. You're worth what somebody's ever willing to pay you. A commodity is worth whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. I think you should be able to accrue as much money as you can, but you are not allowed to get into that, or it's not allowed to be awarded to you until your third year on campus. That would prevent a lot of these kids from leaving. And here's what I also think, AT, and we're going to blow past the break. I don't care. I'll go to a short segment to finish the hour. Here's what I think, and one of the theories that I've come up with watching this stuff unfold daily and watching the Texas A&M fan base, which is as loyal and as boisterous and as supportive as any in the country. What we're starting to see is that it's going to be more lucrative to show loyalty to the school that you're at than it will be to leave. I think that's where we're going.
Well, and so a couple things. One, I agree. I think it's on the front end and the back end. On the front end, we've seen, I think it's pretty obvious, the coaches that complain about NIL and their school doing enough, it's really not about, going out and buying players. It's about making sure that they're able to retain their own players. So that's one. But I do think on the back end, and I think this is kind of what you're getting to, Bronny, there's something that not a lot of people are talking about is, when you go to 2 or 3 schools, the fan base isn't going to have loyalty to you. And I think, and others have talked about this, but I think it is worth mentioning, that alumni network, that Aggie, as you said, as passionate as anybody in the country. Well, you play for 4 years for the Aggies. You're an all-conference guy. You play 2 years in the NFL or the NBA. guess what? You got a job coming out of school, and it's because everybody knows who you are as an Aggie.
Right.
And I think a lot of current players don't really take that into perspective either, is it's about the now. Well, you're an All-American at, fill-in-the-blank school, and you decide for your senior year you're going somewhere else. Now the last school doesn't like you. The new school doesn't really care because you're only there for a year or two. It's like, what's your home after you're done with all this? So, again, these are things that 17, 18-year-old kids and the adults that are advising them, many of them with their hands out in their own right, those are the kind of things that those people don't think about, which is unfortunate. And, again, these are conversations that guys like you and me that are in it every day have that, unfortunately, the general public, which is, frankly, in many cases uninformed, these are the type of things they don't think about, unfortunately.
Uninformed. That's a very polite way to say that, Aaron.
Yeah. You mean the people that yell on me on Twitter don't actually know what they're talking about? Okay, good to know. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Bronny. I thought I was the only one.
Hey, T, I appreciate you sticking around a little bit longer for me, buddy. Like I said, happy holidays, well wishes to you and yours, and we'll probably talk to you on the other side of an A&M bowl game potentially.
All right, I am here. I appreciate you guys. I hope everybody listening has a great holiday as well.
All right, thank you. That's Aaron Torres, Fox Sports contributor, podcast host, best-selling author, and great friend of the TexAgs program. When we come back, we'll finish the 9 o'clock hour. I could have gotten into that stuff with AT, and we could have talked a long time about the ideas that I have that aren't going to make a hill of beans to anybody, especially the decision makers, but the ideas that I have about how to clean up some of this stuff, because it is flying more and more off the handle day by day. And again, I want to reiterate, I am not against paying student athletes. I think they bring in a lot of money to universities, these places, these facilities, the stadiums, the uniforms. They're not rich and elaborate because they're losing money. There's a reason why there's 110,000 people showing up to Kyle Field on Saturdays and spending their hard-earned money because they're passionate about Texas A&M, and they're passionate about their experience in Kyle Field, and they're passionate about this football program reaching the heights and the potential that we all believe that it can. And it's not just across the street at Kyle Field. It's at Reed Arena with Buzz Williams and Joni Taylor. It's certainly at Olsen Field at Bluebell Park with Jim Schlossnagle. A very passionate fan base across multiple sports just wants to see their school reach the mountaintop. And so the student athletes that are out there trying to make that happen, they bring all these people to the stadium. They deserve to be compensated for the money that they've helped earn. I just think we've got to come up with a more efficient way to do this, where it's not the wild, wild west from sun up to sundown every morning throughout the year, where you got to worry about retaining the guys on your team, guys leaving other teams, high school guys, junior college guys, hiring coaching staffs. It's just too much. Again, the word I've used is untenable, and I think that's where we're at, and that's where we're going, barring some kind of change of course here in the near future. But we'll close the hour. A little bit more. We'll get some stuff from Nick and Luke. A real short segment on the other side before we welcome in Logan Lee and the Fan Show during that 10 o'clock hour. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Man, what a good song. We got 45 seconds. Luke, you got text message. You got 45 seconds to read them.
Okay. This is from Jim in Temple. Says, under Tommy Moffitt, it won't be long before Refugio's Ernest Campbell begins to look like and play like Kansas State ex-star Deuce Vaughn. Having family in the Refugio area, Bronny, so I'm quite familiar with that program, and a lot of good things to come for Ernest Campbell from people who have watched him in high school. And also, if you saw it on the boards, there was a video put together by Matt Salvaggio featuring Dante Hall and Dat Wynn and a bunch of other legends welcoming Ernest Campbell to Texas A&M, and I thought that was awesome.
It was a really cool video. Really well done. A lot of Aggie legends in that video. So a lot of people reacting to Jay Bateman. We'll get to more potentially that with the fan show. But basketball, turning our attention that way on the other side of the break. You listen to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Final hour of this Thursday edition of TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Ryan Brauninger inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. We are awaiting, we have confirmation on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. Going to switch gears here, talk a little hoops, a little hardwood, with our good friend Logan Lee, who I think is on his way in to be sitting right next to me for the second segment here. But we're going to start this little basketball talk on the phone. And Logan, I guess the first thing I'll ask you, buddy, just your evaluation on the state of this A&M team heading into these final two non-conference games against Houston Christian and Prairie View A&M, with SEC play looming on the other side of the new year. Where do you feel like this team is at?
Can I say questionable?
Sure.
Is that a good enough answer? I say questionable because Radford is questionable. We don't know the whole situation with Marble, and he obviously changes the dynamic in the post. They've had some good games. They've had some struggles. I think they're better off than they've been in any other year just because of the non-conference schedule that they've played and how they performed against Houston. Obviously, is an uptick from where they had been, but man, this team right now, they've got some bright spots, but they have some question marks, and they've got to answer it. And conference is coming, and we don't really know exactly what we're seeing right now.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the second question that I have written down in my show rundown is, what's the biggest issue facing this team? Is it the lack of a second scorer outside of Wade? Is it Boots' health? Is it the Marble? What is the biggest issue facing this team if you want to be kind of glass half empty?
I think the biggest issue right now is Radford's health. We don't know what it is. We don't know what's going on. He played against Memphis and didn't look great. He looked a little sluggish. Maybe I personally thought it was just his game conditioning. He'd missed a handful of days. He'd missed a couple of games, and you can lose your game type conditioning pretty quickly. And so he didn't look great, but I thought it was due to conditioning. However, he doesn't play against Houston in the very next game, and that's concerning. Obviously, everybody wants him to take care of his health and make sure that he has a full recovery before he gets back in action. But man, that's a big blow to this team because of all of the things that he does for the team. He's a rebounder, he's a scorer, he's a defender, he's a leader. He takes a lot of pressure off of everybody. It's not just Wade Taylor. It's not just taking the pressure off of Wade Taylor and the scoring abilities, but Anderson Garcia and all his back tips and his rebounding, and Henry Coleman and his rebound. Radford gets in there and rebounds on almost every possession, and so he takes the pressure off of the bigs in the post, but he takes the pressure off of the guards on the perimeter, and missing him is missing a lot for this team.
Do you think, too, because of what he can offer late in the shot clock, that it's that much more important for this team? Because who else can create late in the clock other than Boots and Wade?
That's a good question, because I was hoping that that some of the transfers could come in and take that spot. However, we haven't seen that yet. Jace Carter is a spot up shooter, which is great because when Wade and Boots do create and the defense collapses, you have a guy that you can kick it out to. A.P. Law did a great job of creating and the defense focused on him, but one of the biggest recipients of that was Josh Carter. And Josh Carter would knock down 50% of his threes on the season just because AC was able to create. Wade can create, and the defense is focused on him. Who's he going to kick it out to? And that's Jace Carter. Normally, he would also be kicking it out to Radford, and Tyrese would knock down shots. I don't know where where their scoring is going to come from in regards to late clock, because here's the thing. With Radford on the bench and not healthy, Wade has the entire defense focused on him. Like that's what they do. And if you don't have a guy on the block that can have a back-to-the-basket move that forces the defense to shift over when he has the ball on the block, and Marble's a really good passer out of the block, that just enhances the focus on Wade, and he needs help. Obviously, he needs help. He's struggled in a handful of games.
It seems like this is a perfect time to get Houston Christian and Prairie View ahead of that LSU game to start SEC play, just because it's been such a grind, right? The non-conference with these quality opponents, the travel. This could be a time for them to get their feet on the ground and get healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are two things that need to come out of this Houston Christian game. One, learn how to play without Radford. Learn different roles and see where you're at, because whether or not he's healthy for the start of conference, he could be injured in the future, and they may have to play a couple of games without him if he tweaks an ankle or whatever it may be. And so learn to play, because they haven't done well without him the last 3 games or whatever it is. They need to get a system and a rotation in without him, but also just get back into the rhythm of it. Go out there and do what you're supposed to do. Play defense, rebound, score the basketball. Just get in a good rhythm. Get that feel good back about your game and the style of game that you play both on offense and defense. Obviously, Wade Taylor was unstoppable in the second half against Houston. He has a little bit of a rhythm. He has some momentum going into it. So gain on that momentum, build it, and be prepared for SEC when it starts.
Do you think that this is really one of Buzz Williams' biggest challenges that he could have not seen coming? Because I think, just from my understanding of how teams work, he went into this season, Logan, with the ability to let this group go with a lot of freedom, right? They were so experienced. They played so much ball in his system. And now he looks up before conference play starts, and he's got Wade out there. And without 2 of the other big key components to running this team how he thought he was going to run it, do you think maybe his approach changes to call more set stuff and take some of that freedom out of the current offensive setups?
I don't know. I think that's a yes and no question. Yes, it would be smart to run a handful of sets and to get Wade the ball and take some pressure off of everybody in regards to not having to find a flow, but creating a flow. And, hey, I know my job on this possession is to do X. And if I execute my job and my teammate next to me executes his job, then Wade's going to get an open 3 from the wing. And if Wade gets an open 3, anything can happen at that point. So, yes, it's those sets. But if you look at everything that Buzz has done here at A&M, and even at Virginia Tech and at Marquette, he's always had a flow to his team where it's not a set offense, a set play that you can scout. It is read and react. And those are the players that he has on his team. That's who he's recruited. That's how he's built his team. And so they're not just going to step away from that. They may throw in a couple of sets here and there to get the rhythm going, but I don't think that you're going to see a huge change when it comes to looking at the team as opposed to what he had before the season or what he expected before the season and what he has now.
All right, enough doom and gloom. What's the best thing they've got going for them? Let's start looking at glass half full here.
Man, I mean, just look at what Wade did in the second half against Houston. Houston is one of the best teams in the country, if not the best team in the country. Let's see how they go up against Arizona and some of the other schools. I think Houston would be right up there with them. Houston has a dynamic duo at the guard position, and they couldn't stop Wade in anything he did in the second half. I mean, just the way that he got shots, he was open, he attacked the basket. You know, they had a good mix of shots inside the three-point line versus shots beyond the three-point line. And when you play like that, A&M is going to be in any given game against any opponent. And that's the preseason every SEC Player of the Year performance that we've been waiting for. And it happened without Radford suited up. So imagine what happens when he does suit up and both of them get in a rhythm. That is where you start to see the potential of this team.
Who have you been most pleased with their progress throughout 11 games into this season as, you know, maybe not one of the guys you came in expecting to be, we're talking guys outside of Wade and Henry and Boots, these guys that come in, whether it's Solo or Eli Lawrence or Hef or any of these guys. Have you been pleased with the progress of any of these kind of guys that kind of fill in the starting rotation or get in a bunch of minutes?
I mean, obviously, Hayden Hefner is a guy that you have to mention in the conversation. When you look at his production in the last two seasons and then what he's done this year, he took a giant step forward, and he's really stepped up his game in a way that is both on offense and defense. You know, you look at last year, and he was a defensive liability. When he had an open shot on offense, it was questionable if it was going to go in. You know, there was always that chance that it would go in, but it was never he's open, he's going to knock this down. This year, it's an open shot. You're thinking, okay, that's good. 3, go play defense. He's also been I don't want to say a great defender, but he's held his own on defense this year, and that's more than what he did last year. So Hayden Hefner is one of those guys that you say, okay, he is a pleasant addition that we weren't necessarily counting on in all that he does this year. Another guy that he just shows up every day, and he does his role and he plays his part, and that's Anderson Garcia. You know, he did that last season. He's doing that this year again. He's improved tremendously in regards to how big of a role that he plays on this team, and he's the glue. He is what A&M needs in every game and at every point of every game. Slapping the ball out, and instead of grabbing a rebound, just tapping it back out to half court so Wade can get the ball or Hefner can get the ball, whatever it may be, keeping the possession alive. And he loves doing that. He finds joy in keeping the possession alive at the offensive end. On defense, he's going to guard. He can guard the biggest player. He can guard the ball screens. He can guard the point guard if he has to switch. He can guard almost every position, and that's what this team needs. And he's done a great job of it.
You know, they lost 3 of their last 4, and again, we mentioned this 2 games against HCU and Prairie View coming up. Is there guys that you're looking at that need the confidence to come from playing 2 lesser opponents? And look, there's no sin in losing any of these last 3 games. You know, you wanted them to beat Memphis at home. That's a Penny Hardaway coach team that I think is pretty good, you know, potential second weekend team. Obviously, U of H, national title contenders. Nobody goes to John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville and wins hardly ever. So, like, individually, there's no sin in losing any of these games, but you have to wonder what it's done to their confidence to lose 3 out of 4, and now you got injury concerns and your roster isn't looking like it needs to. Where do you think, or who do you think can grab some confidence over these next 2 games leading into league play that you think it'll be important for them to play well for the remainder of the season?
The answer to that question is everybody. Everybody can improve with a little confidence. You know, Wade got his momentum going, like I mentioned earlier, against in the second half against Houston, and he's going to continue to build on that. I think the coaching staff needs some confidence in their team to know who they can play, who they can count on, who is continuing to get better and fits the roles of what is needed. The ever morphing roles and positions because of injury and whatnot. I think this team, they're not in a bad spot. Like you said, it's not a sin to lose 3 games that they lost. I wish they would have beat Memphis. That was a winnable game. The first half, David Jones killed them, and it didn't look good. But the second half was a better performance. They would have hit some shots, had a better shooting night. It could have been completely different. Houston, that was a good game. You know, the first half was unfortunate again, but the second half they played well, and Wade Taylor showed why there was so much hype around his name in preseason talks. Virginia, man, that was an ugly game, but it wasn't an ugly game just because of the way A&M played. Virginia made that an ugly game. They make every game an ugly game, and that's their style. And when you go to their home court in front of their fans who were rocking all night long, that's going to happen. But I think everybody, these next 2 games, everybody needs some confidence. That's the biggest thing. If you look at the way Hayden Hefner plays this year versus last year, the biggest difference is his confidence. His confidence in his own ability to go out and be successful. Confidence is king. It can make or break you. And if you have it, you can be deadly. If you don't have it, you might get killed. And so if these two games can build some confidence in the way that they play offense, the way they play defense, in the sets that the coaches call, I think they're going to be just fine throughout conference play.
All right, well, when you come in studio, we'll talk about what that recipe might look like as they start to navigate these SEC waters. Also want to get your thoughts on just the schedule breakdown and the frequency of games changing from what it has been to what it's going to be in conference. So we'll get Logan in studio on the other side of the break, finish up the basketball talk with him. At the bottom of the hour, we'll have the fan show as we head into the final couple of segments of today's show. You're listening to TexAgs Radio. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Logan's in studio now. He's been married for how long?
Forever.
Forever?
Yeah.
That's Katie. He just means that every day is such a blessing that he cherishes it forever. Right?
Absolutely.
But
you see, wordsmith. I like how you did that.
Well, she was in here the other day. She punched me in the chest. So you weren't even here.
I'm glad she punched you in the chest and not me.
She just walked in here, came upstairs, gave me a hug when she first got here, and then either Dalton or Richard or somebody put her, I guess, in a bad mood. So when she walked
both.
out, she punched me in the chest. And I was like, like we fired your husband, so we can't really take this out on you.
Whoa, now. Easy now.
I was going to see if you had like any wedding. I'm getting ready for a wedding in January. Do you have any like pointers or tips for me?
Yeah.
Everybody says eat.
Do a destination wedding.
Oh, that's too late.
Just get out of whatever you did and just fly away.
You know how much money I've already spent?
Get married get the money back.
Okay, I don't think that's how these things work. What I found is that if you tell people that, yeah, this is for a wedding, the price, incredibly, it just doubles on the spot.
That's why you don't tell them.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that to start. Nobody gave me these tips.
My tip on your wedding day, it is your day. It's your wife's day.
That's exactly right.
Let's say it's really not even your wedding day. On your wife's wedding day, what you should do is take a lot of pictures.
Okay.
Because if you don't take the pictures then, man, you're going to have to keep taking pictures for the rest of your – and don't get me wrong, you're still going to have to take pictures for the rest of your life.
I know.
But take those pictures because, one, you're not going to get that day back. And, two, you're going –
everybody says, like, it goes by so fast you have to talk to everybody. And multiple people have said eat.
Yeah.
Because you'll talk.
You'll forget.
Yeah, and won't eat all day.
But you'll drink.
We're going to the Virgin Islands for our honeymoon, which I'm super pumped about.
That's awesome.
And so I'm thinking that, and I just don't want to be carrying whatever from the wedding into the honeymoon. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to feel good at the honeymoon. I'm going to be tarps off the whole time, come back looking like a chocolate chip cookie. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying?
No, man.
I'm oiled up on the beach. I got some Speedos.
I don't need all this. This is not what I need. This is not what anybody needs.
Right. They're like, can y'all please talk basketball?
You just lost 50% of the listeners right now.
All right, we're down to 4. My family was listening. That was it. Now my grandma's disgusted, so she's turned it off. All right. Let's talk about big picture stuff basketball wise. We talked the team. SEC. Who's the best team in the league right now?
Man, I don't know. Tennessee, Kentucky.
I think Tennessee's talented. I don't know how good they are yet.
Well, Joe Jones is about to find out.
Oh, yeah, he's at the head coach at Tarleton right now. How about that?
They play Tennessee today.
In Knoxville.
Yeah.
I didn't think that the Volunteers were traveling down to Stephenville. But,
I mean.
Again, I don't know who's, I actually think this could be for A&M. They can navigate this even with the questions.
No, I think this is the crazy thing. No matter who they're playing, who the Aggies are playing, I think they have a chance to win.
Well, they just showed you that going to Houston and playing UA.
They have a chance to win every game. The problem is they have to have multiple people show up. It's not just last year Alabama that has Brandon Miller and he shows up and he takes over a game.
Mm-hmm.
Wade can take over a game, but like against Houston, he needed a little bit of help.
Mm-hmm.
He needs that help.
Who was their second highest score in that? It was like 7 points. Was it Jace Carter?
I don't know.
Keep talking. I'll figure it out.
Wade can take over a half. He hasn't shown to take over an entire game just yet this year. And I say this year. Last year he did, but this year's different because all of the defenses are focused on him. And so with the defenses focused on him, he hasn't had 40 minutes of dominance. He's had 25 minutes. He's had maybe 27 minutes.
Wade can win you a game.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's going to win you games. Like, they're going to have more. Like, Wade can take over on a night, and, like, if a couple things go differently at the Toyota Center, Wade wins that game against
Absolutely.
UH. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I don't know that Wade's going to win you a lot of games without, like Jace Carter and Hayden Hefner had 7. If they get to 12, if you get Boots back and he's just somewhat normal, how many boards did Henry Coleman have the other night? 12?
But that's the thing, though. And it's not a knock on Wade because that's how this team is built.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Buzz builds his teams to win by committee. There's not a one and done guy that you throw him the ball and say, go win us the game.
Yeah.
Like that's not what it's about. This is a win by committee. And not only is it a win by committee, it's win by offense and defense. It's not they have such stellar offense that they don't have to play defense. No, they have to play defense.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to see how he is addressing the lack of a second big in the rotation, right? Because going into the year, we all thought it would be Marble and Henry would get the vast majority of the minutes down there. We've seen Wildens Levesque make starts. We saw Solo and Anderson have over 20 minutes against U of H. It's just a very it's going to be a revolving door until they kind of figure out what the best lineup and rotation looks like. Again, that's why when I asked you on the phone, like I think all of this has changed on Buzz because he went in with a good idea, and now he's had to toss that plan out the window.
Yeah, and I don't think there's going to be just a set rotation. Hey, these are the 7 guys that are playing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to have, because it is a win by committee, that's how he has built this team. He does have a ton of different options that are very similar. So if Solo isn't having a good game, you sit him and you play Anderson more.
Mm-hmm.
If Jace isn't having a good game, you sit him, you put Eli Lawrence in, you put Manny in, you put Hayden in more minutes.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different rotations that he can have, and right now it's who has the hot hand.
Yeah.
Who's playing well? Who has the best matchup?
And you mentioned Wade getting some confidence and getting hot the other night, but there's part of me that over these next 2 games, get him off his feet a little bit. He played 35 minutes the other night. I would imagine he's going to average around 32 to 40 a game.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of basketball coming. So where you can get him off his feet, I think it's important that you do that and also build some depth at that guard position.
The only way that you can do that for Wade is if he comes out hot and he starts strong, and then you can rest him a little in the first half, and you don't take away his confidence, because if he misses 3 or 4 and then you pull him,
sure,
you don't want to do that.
It's a balancing act.
But he's got to, if he comes out strong and he attacks the basket and he scores a couple of gimmies, he gets a steal and scores on the fast break, and then he gets fouled, he goes to the free throw line, he makes a 3, all of a sudden at the 12-minute mark, you're looking up and he has 10, 12 points. Sit him for the rest of the half and see what the team can do without him.
Yeah.
But if he misses his first 3 and he has a couple of turnovers, maybe you sit him for a minute or 2 and say, hey, take some time, breathe, you're going back in.
Yeah, and I think, Buzz is obviously adept at managing an entire season. We've seen how his teams get hot late.
Yep.
I want to ask you about Jace Carter because, the comparison when he came in, or maybe the unfair expectation, was that he was going to replace Dexter Dennis. Similar body styles, right? Older guys when they came here. And I like Jace. I think he could get there. Where do you see his growth happening the most between now and the end of the year, though?
I think one, he's going to get a better feel of catching and shooting off of Wade and Tyrese, and just the ball rotation on offense. So he's going to get some more open shots. He's going to be more consistent at making those 3-point shots. I think he's a good rebounder. He hasn't shown that to date, but I think he's a really good rebounder, probably just as good, if not a little better than Dexter Dennis in rebounding. Dexter Dennis just had that intangible of, he basically had a 7-foot wingspan. It wasn't that large, but that's how it felt when he was guarding the other team's best player, and he would lock them up. And Jace doesn't have that type of defense, but I think his defensive intensity is probably the biggest area that he can grow and help this team.
Yeah. All right, last thing before I let you go. Where do you think What's the win-loss record need to look like for them to feel very comfortable with what they did in the preseason or pre-conference play? What do you think they need to do in conference to say on Selection Sunday we're going, okay, A&M's in, they're comfortable? Like, and what's the high end? Like, what is the best case scenario? A 3? Could they get there?
If they win 12, 13 games in conference and they're the right games, they should be comfortable.
Yeah.
If they win 10 games in conference, they're questionable and they probably should be wiping the sweat on the brow.
Yeah.
I think they can win 13 or 14 games if everything comes back. If you have Tyrese Radford, if they start being as cohesive as I think they can, I think that's probably their top end potential of what it is a 14-win conference season.
Have you analyzed the season and prognosticating on the season, forecasted the season, just doing it without Marble at all?
I think you have to right now.
Yeah.
I don't think you can count on him coming back at this point. And if he does come back at this point, what's his conditioning like? Does he understand, like, how are you getting him into the flow of the game?
Sure.
You know, the non-conference, Buzz uses 1,000 different rotations to understand how these players play in different scenarios. He doesn't have any of that with Marble. He can go back last year and understand what Marble did last year, but this is a different team this year. And so we take it back to the first year with Nebo. Nebo missed boot camp because of an injury, and Buzz hardly played Nebo for the first 2 months of the season because he didn't have the knowledge of what Nebo does with the team.
Yeah, and we're closing in on that kind of time frame
exactly.
here.
And so I think you have to look at it and say Marble's out this year, and if he comes back, it's a bonus.
Sure. Yeah. All right, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, man. Good job.
Notice. Yeah. All right, man. On the other side of the break, final couple segments of the show, we'll have the fan show. Matt Browning, Kelly Adams, maybe Roy May. I don't know who's all coming in. I haven't even looked out there in the lobby just yet. But we'll close the show. Final 2 segments on the other side. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, bottom of the 10 o'clock hour, Ryan Brauninger, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Everybody's favorite 30 minutes of radio.
Especially Louis Bellina's.
Every week.
Well, maybe it's their favorite because we knocked it down to 30.
And Logan just said it. This was his favorite segment, so yeah. I'll take it.
Can confirm.
Well, if you're on the favorites list of Logan Lee, it means you've done something pretty well for yourselves in this life. Yeah, he's a good man.
It's a big deal.
I appreciate it. Matt Browning, Kelly Adams, Roy May joining us to give the fans' perspective on a lot of things that are happening both around college football and around Texas A&M. And so we always start with what's on your mind, but I'm kind of going to lead the question. I'll start with you, Roy. I'm going to lead the question. Mike Elko's had 2 press conferences since he's been the head coach at Texas A&M, the introductory one and the one yesterday. And I don't know how much you guys got to listen to either of those. What are your impressions of him when you hear him speak?
So this actually, you didn't have to lead me because this is kind of what was going to be on my mind to begin with. I trust Mike Elko. All right, I trust him. I liked him when he was here. I saw what he did at Duke, and I understand that they had some difficulties this year. But again, quarterbacks going down, and when it's that big of a piece of your offense in a school like Duke, as opposed to where you have enough talent on your roster that can maybe absorb those shocks. I love what Mike Elko's doing. I love his just kind of real no nonsense approach. I really appreciate that. He is probably one of the most minimalist kind of coach speak kind of guys. I think he really just tells you what's on his mind. I trust kind of his process. And when he hired kind of a GM, that was my first positive. I was like, that's an excellent hire. I don't know the guy, but the fact that he's hired one, he understands the actual workings of a program. And I know that right now what's on everybody's mind is the DC hire because it just happened, right? I get that. But again, I trust this. I trust Mike Elko to build the kind of system and culture that treats college football the way it has to be treated now, and which is way closer to an NFL franchise as opposed to 20 years ago high school fed programs. So I love his press conferences. He's simple. He's straightforward. And again, I think he tries to avoid. I mean, every coach is going to have coach speak, but I really truly think that he's not hiding anything. He's telling you what he thinks, and he's not telling us what we want to hear.
Not a dumb guy, right?
No, gosh,
Penn educated.
Yes,
comes across as very intellectual when he speaks. I like what you said, and I've noticed that there's hardly any cliches when he speaks.
Yeah,
he's very honest and open. Matt
he knows the game.
He does. Matt, what have been your impressions of Mike Elko? And then maybe even take that into a thoughts on signing day. What does it even mean anymore?
Yeah, so first of all, I felt like he said all the right things, all the things we've wanted to hear. From going from the Jimbo era and into the Elko era, we'd seen, or we had all kind of guessed at what the interior issues were, because there's obviously something for the product that we were getting on the field, right? So Elko comes in and he says all the right things, and so far I've been incredibly impressed. I'm thrilled with the hire. I think it's been great. I think that the poor guys had to, like you said, drink through a fire hose. Since he got here, you're talking, he's had to hire a staff, try to hold together a recruiting class. The portal opens. He's trying to hold together a roster in new college football, and he's done all that in a very short amount of time. And I think I don't know if anyone could have done a better job overall with what he was presented with. I don't know if anyone could have done a better job. And I feel like he's done a good job. And unfortunately, we've lost some of the guys on the roster that were big names, but at the same time, some have come back, and I'm guessing there's still some possibilities of some coming back. But in regards to the recruiting class, it's not over. We had a good day yesterday. I wouldn't say we set the world on fire, but
I wouldn't say it was a bad day.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is the main guys that we were focused on still haven't signed with anybody. So we still have a second signing day, so we still have some of those guys in the fold, and I don't blame any of these kids for taking a little more time, especially with the new, when they committed to one coaching staff, and now they're having to do a whole new one, and it's not even, that just got finished today.
Some of it.
Yeah, some of it, yeah. So one of the big pieces got today.
Yeah, one more piece is signing tomorrow, right? Isn't Tristan signing tomorrow?
Tristan Jernigan, yes, the linebacker. He was one of the ones that's left just committed, that it hasn't signed, but has a scheduled signing day tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So, look, people ask me. I am a I deal with this day to day. I am perfectly okay where the state of the program, the state of the recruiting. I'm good where everything's at because I know the processes that are being undergone to get there. I know the organizational structure he intends to implement and has already started implementing. And then whenever he's able to come out in a press conference and say, you can really compromise your program by trying to make a short-term splash, and you can compromise the long-term success and goals of your program.
It's a great quote.
Yeah,
It
I
really
thought that
is.
was so wise and like gave you a glimpse of this isn't some kind of happenstance thing for him. Everything that he's doing, at least from the outside looking in, is methodical and thought about.
Well, it has substance.
Yeah.
Not flash.
Kelly?
I like that he appears to be, and I think he really is, a very no-nonsense coach. Like, this is what we're going to do. This is the type of people I want. If you're not that, no hard feelings. If you are that, let's go. And I that's just kind of the vibe I get from the press conferences, from the different things. Very straightforward. He builds relationships with players. Like, you can't be that straightforward if you don't have a relationship with people. Like, being that honest without a relationship just makes you a jerk. And he's not a jerk. Like, you can see that. And so he builds relationships with people. He's very straightforward. He's very honest. He's very into the culture that he's building, like you mentioned.
That's a word he's used a lot.
Yeah. The culture is so important. And I do like the GM hire because, like you say, between the portal and the recruits and the day-to-day, and he needs a guy helping him out in some of those areas.
And the fact that he understands he needs a guy.
Yes.
Like, self-awareness goes a long way.
And that's part of that intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, he hires a defensive coordinator as being a defensive guy because he wants to manage the program. He has no interest in calling the defense. I'm sure he'll have some input, but this is different than the previous regime where the head coach wanted to be involved in the offense and everything about it, so much so that he didn't allow his new offensive coordinator to call his own offense. He had to learn a whole new playbook and call that. So I think that in today's era of college football coaches, the head coach, it's not much coaching football that goes on. No. It's managing people.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be.
And I want to say that a lot of people have focused on the guys that we've lost, right? Because there are some big names, right? With Walt and Evan Stewart and guys like that. But I mean, does no one stop and go, wait a second? We still have a ton of talent over there across the street, and it's not going anywhere. And you got to give credit for I mean, there are other schools who aren't going through a coaching change that have way more players in the portal than we do.
Florida.
I mean,
Well,
so Ohio State still has more players in the portal than we do. And so the idea that, you get a coaching change, that's going to happen in today's college football. But the guys that have stayed there's a couple things. First, great. They stayed. They're bought into not only, I'm sure NIL has something to do with it, but they're also bought into A&M. They want to be here at A&M, and that's the kind of thing that I, as a fan, appreciate. You know what I mean?
And that leads to one of the main questions that I asked Liucci, what I asked Aaron Torres today, and what I've just kind of prognosticated on throughout the show is the current state of college football. Kelly, are you happy with it?
No. But, I'm not – college football was never supposed to be about free agency, which is essentially what the transfer portal has become.
Exactly. And again, I've said it again on the show. I'm not opposed to the players getting paid.
I agree with that. No,
I think
it's the free agency part of getting paid. And it kind of comes with it. I think it'd be a hard time paying the guys without having some level of free agency involved. But this free-for-all that we've ended up with that the NCAA just refuses to even acknowledge.
And it's not just NIL. It's the portal. It's the recruiting calendar. Like, when are they going to make a decision that's going to make everybody go, oh, that makes a lot of sense?
And it all started when they changed the scholarships from 4-year commitments to 1-year commitments. Because now the guys are signing 1 year, the schools are signing for 1 year, the transfer portal's open, everybody's willing to offer money. You put all of it together, you end up in a pretty bad spot.
Well, and that's the thing is, Browning, you said, that's going to happen with a coaching change. They didn't have a coaching change at Ohio State. This is just college football now. Yeah. And I hate to say it because I don't personally think that I would agree with this man on much of anything, but Chip Kelly kind of knocked it out of the park. I mean, if you're going to fix it, if you're going to find a way to put the toothpaste back in the tube, it has got to change, but it has got to be a wholesale change. That's the problem. And getting all these presidents and all these board guys and all the different conferences on the same page, Yeah, okay.
Well, at least in the NFL, you've got 32 teams that, for the most part, want to play a like-minded game financially.
Yes.
Right?
In college, it's a race.
Right. And you think about Deshaun Watson's contract and how much it made everybody upset, the owners, because what did it do to the quarterback market? It reset it. Now imagine you've got 65 Power 5 teams who have no interest in playing by the same financial kind of fair play rules as everybody else, who are setting the market at different positions at different price ranges. So that now when Roy May comes out of high school and he gets $500,000 as a left tackle, well, Matt Browning, you know Roy May from high school, and you know what he got. So the next year, I want more than him.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's my problem with it is that the difference between pro football and college football is the pride aspect of it, right? My school is better than your school. And here's how I prove it. We get these kids want to come to our school because our school is better, not because of the money. Now it's because of money. You win a national championship, whoever wins a national championship next year, it won't be as much school pride as it used to be. It's going to be more like, okay, they paid more.
Yeah,
right?
no.
They had more money.
No, if we win a national championship, I'll paint
I'll still be thrilled, but I'm still saying though that's the difference I'm seeing in college football overall now is the fact that whoever's paying the most money that'll be the idea.
Fans need to win. Fans need to get over, like in the new era of and how college football is. Fans need to get over the fact that these kids may not love A&M as much as you do. But that shouldn't take away.
That's one of the major changes. That's just one of the goes with the free agency aspect, all the things going with it. This idea that, we want them to be committed Aggies for the rest of their lives, but some of them are just here for a paycheck.
Some of them are just mercenaries, and that's just and whether you like it or not, the problem is that's what it is right now. But that shouldn't change the fact that if A&M won a national championship every single.
Oh no, I'm not saying I wouldn't be thrilled. I'm just saying that's the difference now is that you've got guys like Von Miller who is a lifelong Aggie, loves his school, will tell everybody he can about it.
You'll still get guys like that though.
You will.
And I do think that there is a change coming to endear yourself to a fan base because long term it will be more lucrative than looking for the next place to go.
Yeah, that's
this is the thing that just kind of the direction I see it trending. But for right now, I think this whole thing's a house of cards. I don't know when it's coming down. I don't know what the gust of wind will be to undercut it. But I just don't think that we can continue going in this direction because the gap between the haves and the have-nots is going to get exponentially larger. So we'll see what happens. We got to go to a break. We'll finish up the show on the other side. You're listening to TexAgs Radio. It's the Fan Show. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, final few minutes of the program today before we kick it to the Louis Bellina Show. I'm Ryan Brauninger in the host chair as David Nuno is off on his Christmas vacation. I believe Nick and Luke will be hosting tomorrow. We got the fan show in here. Guys, couple questions to kick us out and get us on the road. What are you looking forward to about the holiday season, both with A&M Sports and with your families?
For me, my kids are finally at the age where they're asking me to go to A&M sporting events. Like, we've always gone, but it was always, hey, there's a basketball game. Do you want to go? And now it's, hey, Dad, there's a basketball game. Take me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 100% of
So
the
that's
time.
That's both.
Yes.
Yeah, it knocks out both.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
I got my daughter coming in on Christmas Day. She serves at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. Just barely missed the hurricane, the tornado they had through there a couple weeks ago. But I'm excited to have her in town. She hadn't been in town in almost 2 years, so I'm excited to have her.
Roy, you got to love that.
Well,
being a former military man yourself.
Oh, no, there's nothing better than going home for the holidays. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to, my long-time tradition of chili cheese hot dogs on Christmas Eve. It's got a great story behind it. And then, I'm looking forward to watching the ladies get into the double digits on their win streak. I mean,
Joni Taylor is a rock star.
If you're not thrilled about what she's doing, then you're not paying
attention. She's the opposite of Buzz Williams. If you watch them on the sideline and compare them side by side, she's the opposite, but they get the exact same thing from the team.
That's my sports thing, and then I'll do one more. Is I'm looking forward to the boards calming down.
Yeah,
I got you, Bronny.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that.
That's cesspool right now. So, family always. I love the fact we've got Aggie basketball. We got a bowl game. We got all that coming up. So this is going to be really fun. We didn't get to talk about the new defensive coordinator. I don't know much about him, but I do know.
Saw him at Army.
I do know he's got some Texas ties. He played. Didn't he play? I think he played running back for the Texas State Armadillos back in like '89. I'm gonna see who gets that reference.
All right, thank you guys for coming in. That's TexAgs Radio. Louis Bellina on the other side of the break. A very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from me, myself. David should be back. I don't know when. Who cares? You enjoy your vacation. Feliz Navidad, Nuno.